You write in your book about Trump's reckless words, and you say that he endangered your family who were with you at the Capitol that day and everyone who was at the Capitol that day. And so my question is, what should be the consequences for those actions?
Well, I believe everyone that rioted at the Capitol needs to be held to the strictest account of the law. I said it that day, and it continues to be my position. I'll never forget the simmering indignation that I felt that day, seeing those sights on the cell phones as we gathered in the loading dock below the Senate chamber. I couldn't help but think, not this, not here, not in America. But with regard to others, with regard to those in the political debate, I think that's up to the American people. I truly do. And look, I'll always be proud of the record of the Trump Pence administration. For 4.5 years, President Trump was not just my president, he was my friend. And we worked closely together to advance the policies that we'd been elected to serve. And I think it won that historic election in 2016. It won us 10 million more votes. It didn't end well, and that tragic day in January will always be a day of great sadness for me. Sadness about what had happened to our relationship, the bad advice the president was accepting from a group of lawyers that, as I write in my book, should never have been allowed on the White House grounds, let alone in the Oval Office. And I do believe that when I saw that tweet come across that criticized me directly at a time that a riot was raging in the Capitol hallways, that the president's words were reckless, and they endangered my family and everyone at the Capitol building. But quite frankly, Jill, I didn't have time for it. And the president had decided to be a part of the problem. I was determined to be a part of the solution.
Why, after January 6th, after his supporters literally stormed the Capitol trying to kill you, after he never bothered to call and ask how you were doing, if your family was safe, if your wife was safe, if your children, your daughter was safe, why would you be okay parting on good terms?
You know, I've often told people I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. As a Christian, forgiveness is not optional. In the days after January 6th, the morning after, the president issued a statement saying the right things, condemning the rioter, committing to a peaceful transfer of power. He would address the nation in the days ahead and put our administration on the proper public track. But I'll be honest with you, Jill, I was angry. But the Bible says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And I prayed to do that. I made it clear to him that I believed that I did my duty that day. And I sensed genuine remorse on his part. The President and I had forged not only a good working relationship, but a friendship over 4.5 years. We worked together literally every day. But he was different in that time. I encouraged him to take the matter to prayer. The President told me many times that he was a believer. I told him he ought to take this time to pray. And I walked down to the Oval Office. I walked back to that dining room. And then I said, I'm also never going to stop praying for you. And he looked up at me from seated at that table, smiled faintly and said, that's right. Don't ever change. And it was on that foundation of grace that we did part amicably, Jill. I continue to pray for the president. I continue to work through the feelings about that day, but we parted the White House amicably, finished the people's business. And in the weeks that followed, from time to time, he would call me and to speak and check in. But when he returned to criticizing me and others who had upheld the Constitution that day, I just decided it'd be best to go our separate ways, and we have.
You're obviously a very religious man. How do you square that? And how did you stand by Trump for 4.5 years when you, as a running mate, he went after Ted Cruz's wife's looks. He repeatedly went after John McCain, said he wasn't a hero.
I joined the ticket to support Donald Trump in the candidacy that he was nominated to run. And I, as his vice president, I believed it was my role to be loyal to the president. He was not only my president, he was my friend. I only had one higher loyalty, and that was to God and to the Constitution. And so every step of the way I squared it was I believed that I had been elected vice president to support the presidency that Donald Trump had been elected to advance. It wasn't exactly the style of presidency that I would have advanced had I been the first name on the ballot. But it was his presidency, and I was there to support him and help him. And until that fateful day in January 2021, I sought to do just that. And the president looked up at me and said,